Hello again. My name is Monique. Welcome to today's webinar. It's titled FBI Warns of Malware Posing as Beta Versions of Apps. I'm the Director of Mobile Endpoint Product Marketing here at Zimperium, and I'll be your host today. Before we begin, I want to introduce our other speaker, who is Krishna Vishnubholta, our VP of Product Strategy here at Zimperium.
Hey, Monique. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Of course. Today's webinar will be more of a discussion between the two of us about the public service announcement the FBI recently issued about beta testing apps. I'll just go over some quick housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A function. And if you have any questions, we'll get back to you and we'll try to answer those as best as we can. Any questions that might require some research, if we run out of time, we'll follow up with you. All right, let's jump right in. So we'll be discussing the recent public service announcement. We'll go over what beta testing apps are, provide some guidance, and talk about how we can help. So in August, the FBI posted an announcement warning that cybercriminals are embedding malicious code in mobile testing applications to defraud potential victims. Now, the victims were typically contacted on dating sites and social media, and in some cases, they are promised incentives such as large financial payouts. And the agency is aware of fraud schemes where the victims are contacted and directed to download mobile beta testing apps such as cryptocurrency exchanges, that's still money instead of investing it. And these recovery schemes will charge an upfront fee and either cease communication after receiving the initial deposit, or will produce an incomplete or inaccurate tracing report and claim they need additional fees to recover the funds. Now, let's go into a bit about what beta testing apps are to give our audience a bit more context. Krishna, can you give us some insight?
Yeah, sure, Monique, right? And I think, folks, with the FBI issuing public guidance, right, I think it's evident that this is no longer happening here and there, that it's hit critical mass, right? Now, we are a product company as well, so beta testing and beta testing programs for mobile app developers are actually very useful, right? So if you think about, let's just stick to both the stores, right, Monique, right? The stores that everybody knows, you have Apple Store and you have the Google Store, right? And as a developer, if you have an app in these stores, before you release an app, and since the success of your app is really tied to your business model and how you monetize, a lot of app developers want to get some early feedback, right? And they want to get it in a way without damaging or hurting the first impression that the app might make, right? So really what this beta program on these stores, whether it's TestFlight or Google Play, allows us to do is distribute what we call a pre-release version of an app, right? And the way we do that is we say, hey, we have a version of this application. There might be some interesting features or some experimental features in them. We want to expose it to a select group of people and get some feedback, right? Whether how easy is it to use? Do they like the feature? Do they like the UI, UX, and so on and so forth, right? That's the idea of the beta program, to get some early feedback before actually releasing your app and exposing it to potentially the millions of people who are on these stores. And these typically last 1 to 3 weeks, the most beta programs that we've seen, depending on what you're exposing them to, the scale of change, it could be a 10, 15 testers, or it could be way over 200, 300 testers, right? And the stores give you the flexibility to choose how you want to do this. It works both ways, right? One, if you're familiar with the Google Play Store beta program, you can go volunteer, right? There are a lot of people who are willing to be testers and beta testers and say, hey, you're going to raise their hand and say, I volunteer. And the other side is, if I'm the developer, I can say there's a certain set of people that I want to go after. I'm going to send them an invite-only type of a request, QR code and email. Say, hey, I would love for you to take a look at what we have to offer and provide your feedback, right? And I can get pretty picky about who I choose. But if you look at both these models, people who are raising their hand already want to be part of it, right? But if the app developer wants to be very picky about who he invites, how he invites, he's got to incentivize him, right? And this is where, to your point, things can start going wrong because we see beta programs with all kinds of different incentives, right? Either it's swag, everybody loves nice swag, free services, discounted services, or money, right? Monetary is kind of gone from simple to complex with cryptocurrency showing up, right? Earlier, it used to be a Starbucks gift card, credit, Amazon. Now with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and everything else, depending on the type of app they're looking at, whether it's a cryptocurrency app, it might be a new investing app, they're offered cryptocurrencies, right? And there's so many coins out there, who knows what they're worth. But these are all, again, incentives that are being dangled in front of testers to get them incentivized, right? Some of them, to your point, say, hey, if you pay an upfront investment or upfront payment, when this app becomes big, you will get a lot more money back, right? And there are a lot of people who are willing to take the risk when the amounts are not too large. So a lot of these incentives actually work. I think people think they don't, but they do. Now, that's one part of the problem. But the second part is, most of times beta testers, when they're testing the app, have no idea what's inside the app, right? It's a black box. You go in, you say, yes, I'm willing to test it. You spend the time and you start testing the app and you think it's a genuine app, you're giving feedback. But most of the times there could be malware in the app, right? When you sign up for a beta program, you typically get, let's just say you say, okay, I'm ready to start beta testing. You'll get an email or a QR code to do a couple of things, and then you start testing the app. The URLs you're getting in your welcome emails or any email as part of the beta program could have phishing links, right? You could be sent to an infected site that's downloading malware. It could be stealing your credentials, right? It could be stealing your data, your beta test, whatever is in your profile, right? So a lot of these things are under the hood of the app. And just because if it's beta tested and it's the beta program is one of the two legitimate and the largest stores, I think a lot of beta testers assume there's nothing malicious. There cannot be anything malicious going on, right? And that's what works really well for threat actors, because kind of Play Store and Google, the Play Store and App Store have this aura of trust. And they're just abusing that to get testers to give up their identity, give up their credentials, and in some cases, money, right? And that's how this thing works.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, what's interesting is, in today's modern workforce, there's still a lot of us that are in this hybrid scenario. So some of us may have corporate issued devices that we utilize, and some of us may be used in our personal devices for work as well. I think that's where the line gets blurred in terms of, is this risky or not risky? But I kind of trust the company, but I'm not sure. Um, I think at this point, if you're using your personal device for, checking work emails or checking productivity apps, you really need to think twice about what type of programs you're participating in, such as these beta programs, don't you think?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Monique, right? I think when we think about beta programs, the notion of a consumer comes to mind. Saying, hey, these are just consumers. What does this have to do with enterprises, right? But the fact is, all of us, to your point, are consumers and employees at the same time. And we know 85 to 90% of companies allow BYOD, right? They don't want two phones, they don't want to issue a phone, and employees don't want two phones. So you have the same person playing a role of a consumer on a device, by being part of beta, also using that same device to access enterprises, right? And that's why this is no longer just a consumer problem. This is quickly becoming, well, you're bringing this risk to the enterprise's front door problem, right? So it can't be ignored. It's the same actor, which is the consumer, posing a risk to himself and potentially the enterprise that he accesses with that same device.
Absolutely. And I think what people need to understand, like especially end users, is that these bad actors, fraudsters, whatever we want to call them these days, that's their job, is to make this look as legitimate as possible. So there are times where, you may not even know if the app is malicious or not, because, they're using names, images, or descriptions that are similar to popular apps, such as, like a flashlight app. How many of us know if this flashlight application is safe or not, because they might be utilizing elevated permissions? There's just a lot of things to look to that you need to keep top of mind, especially when utilizing these applications for personal use.
Yeah. So, Monique, what are some things to look for, right? Let's say this happens to you and
That's a great
you happen to
question.
go into a beta program. What can they do?
That's a great question, because that kind of segues into, our next slide, which is what kind of guidance and what type of key indicators of compromise can you look for when utilizing these applications? I think really taking a look at your mobile device and, being self-aware. Is your mobile battery draining faster than usual? Is your mobile device slowing down while processing a request? Um, Unauthorized apps installed without the user's knowledge. Like, take a look at your app library. Are there some apps that you may not remember that you installed, or is this app that's installed on your phone? Like, do you recognize that application? Uh, and then, are there persistent pop-up ads? And I know, going to a website or going to um, another part of an application, these pop-ups that look like ads, they may provide system warnings, such as, your device has malware, or have reminders. The whole purpose of those pop-ups is to entice an end user to click on them. So when you click on them saying like, oh, you want a free air fryer, or you have malware, like the red banner, or don't forget you have a doctor's appointment today, and you click on these little pop-ups, that could actually install malware on your device and infect it even further. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And apps that request access to permissions, if I'm using a calculator app, why does it need access to, my microphone? Why does it need access to my camera and other parts of my phone that it doesn't have anything to do with? uh, these are functionalities that you really need to think about before providing, that access. Why is it important to check that, Krishna?
So, it's quite interesting when we look at the indicators of compromise, right? And I think the first two are something that's near dear to us as a mobile security company. Earlier it would be quite evident if your battery was draining faster, device seemed slow. But I think with the way the devices have evolved, right? There's even faster hardware on these devices. They've become way more advanced, have way more memory. So I think what's happening with consumers, a lot of us, is we don't notice it that much, right? We've got bigger, meaner phones, and sometimes this is subtle, right? Permission requests. Nobody almost ever looks at the permissions an app asks for, right? Think of the last favorite app you downloaded. I don't care. I'm just clicking on that button saying, okay, I don't want to read any of this. I just want to access the app that I want to download, right? So there's a lot of, I think, what we call cyber hygiene with mobile, I think gets in the way of us observing a lot of this, right? We're not aware, we're not in tune with these things, I think, which also work against us. Now, on the right-hand side, one of the things we've seen is check reviews. And I think there's been a lot of chatter around, well, how many of these reviews are real, right? There are companies that let you have fake reviews. So I think that even though the guidance is quite obvious and intuitive, we see when we talk to customers and consumers, because we're in both sides of that business, a lot of the things that are happening in the world actually work against us, right? Suspicious URLs. And we know, especially due to the mobile form factor, right? I can't even tell what URL I'm clicking on, right? It's so hidden on a mobile device.
Right.
I'm just clicking links my friends send me, and it's just going from place A to place B. And it's because it's from my friend, I think it's legitimate, and we keep moving. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of behavioral stuff that just makes this no longer intuitive or common sense, unfortunately,
Right.
as a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, the other thing you mentioned was, well, as a consumer, there are things you can do, but there are also enterprises that are worried about these things, right? Because their employees, right, are engaging in these behaviors and are at risk of falling victim to beta apps. And for them, there are options, right? There
Right.
are other tools out there beyond awareness and education that can help their employees kind of be a little bit more aware and even potentially protect themselves from some of these things.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting is that our mobile devices are just so small and portable and amazing because they can do so many things at one time. But that portability and the small screen actually works against us, not only as employees, but as consumers as well. Because when you're taking a look at emails, how do you know that email is sent from, you know, an attacker or something? Because you actually
Yeah.
have to do more steps to see who actually sent the email. And like you had mentioned with URLs, you know, we're using a lot of shortened URLs that mean nothing, that
Yeah.
actually redirect to wherever we want them to go. So as an employee, as a user, as a consumer, you know, it's really hard to stay ahead of these risks and threats that are posed by these beta testing applications. But you
Oh,
make a really
absolutely.
good point. Yeah, you make a really good point on enterprises taking the time and seeing that these mobile devices are more of a risk factor in the workplace. And they do need to understand, you know, what can we do for BYOD policies to not only protect ourselves, but to protect our employees and the information that's being sent back and forth. So I think that's a good, you know, segue into how Zimperium can help. Krishna, can you go into a bit on mobile endpoint
Yeah.
security and why it's important?
Yeah. So if you take the conversation we just had, right? Consumers are at risk, but enterprises also understand that the consumer is also their employee, right? And when enterprises decide to use mobile as part of their business model, they make two decisions, right? One, they say, for more productivity, I will allow my employee to access enterprise stuff on his personal device. And the other side, they say, for that same productivity and maybe to grow our business and reach, we're also going to build, develop, procure mobile applications to further that cause, right? So they invest in both sides of that equation. But for them, if you have 50, 60, I mean, for some of the banking customers we have, they have 280,000 employees. They're coming to us and saying, we understand these risks with beta apps, malware, right? How do we protect our employees, which in turn will keep us safe, right? And that's really the problem Zimperium is solving. On one side, what you see as mobile endpoint protection is nothing but us helping enterprises give access to all their employees on their mobile phone in a secure, risk-based manner, right? And what does that mean, right? There are two parts of this.
Right.
One, if you think of an employee, he's accessing information, right? Enterprise information on his browser or an app on the phone, right? And one, with Zimperium help, the enterprise can say, you're trying to access your email, but I see that your device is not safe for some reason, right? You might have malware on your device, you're in an unsecure Wi-Fi, and they can pause that access temporarily, right? Say, hey, you're in an insecure network. How about you move off that, and then we'll let you access the enterprise, right? So one, we give them this ability to assess risk of the device that's accessing stuff in real time, right? And either reduce the access, limit the access, or completely cut it off, which is extremely valuable. At the same time, what do you and me do as employees? Like, I have 156 apps on my phone, and I think I download a new one every week now. Don't ask me why. But there's all these apps on the same phone, and the enterprise is going, you downloaded a new app. Does that pose a threat to me and the access I gave you? So we're also giving them a risk assessment of these apps on their employee phone, saying, this one's okay, this one is potentially not good for your privacy and security. So they can factor that into who they want to give access to and how much, right? That's the
Absolutely.
on-device protection and app analysis. Big things. And I know, Monique, you have some insight into this as well.
Absolutely. And with applications, it's not only permissions. Am I right? Because yes, there are elevated permissions, and is the application, accessing your microphone or camera, but there's other risks that applications pose, such as where is this information being sent? Is this information being tied to your personal identifiable information? But not only that, like, are there other countries this information is being sent to? And the report that's generated with our application vetting within our mobile first security platform, admins and security teams can generate that report and be able to drill down and see exactly what risks and vulnerabilities and threats these applications are posing, where they can adjust their security policies. We offer granular control within our platform where you can utilize this information to adjust, right?
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's the equation that you're talking about, right? When we talk mobile, there is risk due to the device and there's risk due to the app.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to understand that, you need to understand both sides, which is what really our mobile threat defense is. But this is for the private sector, right? We have a whole bunch of organizations in the private sector saying, hey, we want to protect our employees. What can we do? And we help them. But on
Mm-hmm.
the other side, we also have cities and states that are concerned about their residents, right, using their mobile phones. Because if you look at how city and state services have evolved in the last 5 years, they have digitized most of their services, right?
Oh,
How you
yeah.
pay utility bills, how you report crime, like the 311 apps, a lot of it is going digital. So they're encouraging the residents to use more of the digital services. But at the same time, just like they feel about physical safety, they also feel responsible for digital safety. And that's what we're doing with governments in the public sector is we're taking the same endpoint protection and providing them a consumer version to them so that they can provide it to their residents and keep them safe. Because at the end of the day, a consumer and employee becomes the same person. And that's really Zimperium's contribution to this problem is they are, apart from your behavior and your hygiene, they are tools that can help you make better decisions on mobile devices. And that's really where Zimperium comes in to help.
Right. That's what I really like about our Z Secure program. We work with local municipalities to keep the devices of our residents safe. And this is a no-cost program. So if you want to install Z Secure on your phone, we currently partner and work with the city of Dallas, the state of Michigan, LA, and the city of New York, and then soon we'll have the city of Boston as well. So there are other cities and states out there that are taking this serious and providing their residents with a tool that they can utilize to not only keep their private data safe, but to help prevent scams like financial scams that are associated with making these online bill payments, with phishing, with these beta applications. So um, I really like that we're doing something for our residents as well, in that, we have a great product that secures employees, but we want to share that with, the rest of the world. And, residents are important as well. So that's really interesting. And, I love everything you said about that.
Yeah, we have a question from Paul Lesniak. Paul, I see your question. Do our capabilities and solutions work the same across Android, iOS, and Chrome OS? Right now, let's talk about Android and iOS, because for us, both of those are true mobile device platforms, and they're 70 to 80% the same capabilities, right? The 20-30% is different because of what the platform allows us to do by design, right? So there is some difference in how we do it and what we can do, but majority of the capabilities are the same. Chrome OS works quite differently, right? Because we're operating on the Chrome browser. It's like a plugin. So there's a lot of capabilities there, but it's quite different. If you are interested, Paul, please drop us a note. We would love to reach out and kind of go through this in a little bit detail. But majority of the core capabilities that the market has demanded of us are similar across the three. I hope that answers your question. Perfect.
Awesome.
Folks, that was what we had. Any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A tab, and Monique and I will take the opportunity to answer.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, Krishna, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We have more webinars coming up, especially one on the recent NIST guidelines that were released. So take a look at our events page and see what we have going on. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.